Hi, how are you?
Good, how you doing?
Doing well.
Good. Okay, so we'll bring this May 3rd Finance Committee meeting to order. First order of business would be to approve the minutes of April 19th.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, so we have a first and a second. Any questions? Okay, and all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, all right, approved. Thank you. All right, I will turn it over to Sandy. We'll talk about capital funds, fund balance, and the 21-22 budget.
All right, I'm going to share my screen.
Okay.
Now if I get this right. Right. Okay. So I put everything into this one PowerPoint. It's a little long, a lot of numbers, but I'll see if I can simplify this to the important items. First, of course, I have to point out our timelines. May 13th will be adoption of a proposed final budget. And remember, even at that point, it can change, and it will change as soon as if we have different, if we get different results. Like for the state budget hasn't passed yet. So if that is passed, then we'd be able to update our revenue numbers for basic instructional subsidy and special education subsidy. Fund balance. This was a question, one of the questions. I tried to address all the questions that were asked of what different ones requested. Okay, so fund balance. And what I'm showing you here is the total fund balance. This doesn't count what is committed or assigned, because these fund balances are lower because of commitments and assignments. For example, in 2021, or let's say 1920, we ended the year with 19,950, but as I said here, 5 million of it was transferred into capital. Out of that, committed is 5.5 million, partially for retirement and for debt service. And then there's assignment of another several million to balance the budget for 2021, for COVID expenses, and for the transfer for the turf fields. So in the, some of these funds are committed and not all of them are unreserved fund balance. And just so you could see the change in the fund balance. So over the last couple of years, it wasn't like $4 or $5 million. It was several hundred thousand. And then until we got to 1920, which as we all know, COVID hit, expenditures didn't occur, additional funds came in, one-time funds for ESSER funds. So that made an impact on the 1920. But then at that point, we decided we needed to transfer those funds. And that is very important as we move forward. Capital funds. Where are we with capital funds? So capital reserve, as you can see, we have a little over 10.9, but we have committed funds for turf of 739,000. So the balance that's usable is 10.2. And in capital projects, funds that are left over from the middle school project is 3.6. So our capital funds available prior to our commitments is 13.8, which is great considering the projects we have moving forward. And you'll see the effect that they have on this balance. I mean, it's good that the board has transferred those money over the last several years over time, basically, to keep a capital fund for those needed expenses, those one-time expenditures. Capital commitments. These are numbers that are committed. The evaluation from TRC, Walt Road paving, which should happen on Wednesday. It better happen on Wednesday. Muhlenberg Green, this is just the balance of the safe entrances. The Giza project, this is the balance of 1A. And then full day K, you see it's a little lower than the numbers I gave you before because Dr. Farina did get some lower pricing on some of the desks and furniture. So that's my new number. Barry Isaac for the softball field, you approved this at a last board meeting. And then the Marlboro Playground, it's really 142,000, but 20,000 is coming from the PTFS, which is a contribution into our general fund. And the other 20,000 is coming from what was the activity fund, which was transferred into the general fund. So that's reduced the cost. Capital commitments also, the softball field. This is an estimate based on what Mr. Kenwood gave me, I think Jim Mazika had provided estimates on different items that are needed for that field. The high school welding hood and high school shop ductwork, these are items that we've been planning for, as I'll tell you, a few years, but they need to be done. The high school gym basketball backboards, it's on here. We didn't commit it yet, but it is something that we need to do. And the new property sidewalk, we have a deadline. When we purchased the property, the deadline was October to the current owners, so that becomes our deadline. So we will have to complete that. And Giza Phase 1B, this is an early estimate. They've worked at reducing it. It was a little over $1 million more. Yes, it is higher than they originally proposed when we met and approved Noresco to do our project. Obviously, things have changed in the sense of materials and other items that they're looking at. They looked at value engineering already. We really have carefully looked at what we are doing to see if there's a way we can reduce costs. And even with that, this is the lowest we've come. Does not include other items that we probably will want to include later. So I would say to you, this is our best estimate at this point, but it's only going to be greater, not less.
Quick question.
Yes.
The new property sidewalk, was that out of facilities, I guess? What's
I
that for? I don't
never
remember.
heard about that.
That was the one, I don't even remember about the wood property. I think Melanie, I talked to you way back before we finalized the agreement. They, excuse me, the attorney supplied us with a letter saying that the sidewalk had to be redone. Because you had suggested you had people from like Red Hill did it, Borough, you paid them, I guess, for doing some sidewalks for you. They had an estimate in there already of about 13.7. There was a letter that said they had till October of 2021 to replace that sidewalk. What we did when we negotiated the property sale, I said to them, wait, why should I pay that full cost when you have this letter? So we split it down the middle. They reduced the price of the property by half the cost. And then we're, picking up the other part of the cost. So it was a really brief conversation, but it was just before we finalized the final agreement on the property. But it will have to be done. It's kind of something we can't avoid. It was coming from the Red Hill, from the borough. Any other questions with those items? I can go back to.
No, this was the first I heard about the welding hood and the shop ductwork at the high school as well.
Okay, they were on the list ever since we had the fire. So it's been, it was items that, so we moved the welding hood that, this goes back. So it was at the middle school, we transferred what we had there to the high school, but it's really not set up properly, or it doesn't work as well as it should. So
No, it's not vented, so it's not legal.
okay, that's the right way to put it. It's not legal. So it really does need to be done, and it's one thing that we put off, and we really can't put it off any longer. These are two that I think these are updated costs. Originally, the ductwork was about half that cost. Doug gave me the updated cost, which we received maybe a month, maybe 2 or 3 months ago. As far as when we will do it, I don't know, but it is the two items that need to be done in the shop area.
Okay.
So the balance remaining, that over 10.9 that you had is now down to 3.7, which is, I would like to keep in our capital, but we know the Giza is not finished once this project is done, and there are some other items that we talked about needing in the high school, replacement of possibly in the ceiling area and some tiles and other items that we may need once we have some research done on the ceiling. So that could cost additional amount, which we don't have the price for. There's another items that I did not include, which were on your critical projects list that was passed last April. Most of those items were completed, which is great. The Ed Center HVAC replacement is not in this list, and it was on that list. We still do not have a price. So we asked Noresco to give us a price maybe a month and a half ago. They still have not come back with that pricing. So that is to be determined, because once we have the pricing, even though it's on the critical list, that'll be, as everything is, a board decision, whether we carry through and complete that, replace that, or whatever the thought is there. The other item that I think wasn't done, to install gates to secure the parking lot adjacent to the playground for 4-5 building, that was also on that list, but was not completed. And I guess there's, rethinking whether that's necessary or not. So again, I just wanted to show you that the capital is being used for the purpose it's there for. I mean, it's for one-time expenditures, needed expenditures. I can't say we're putting anything off. We try to do things as we need to do them, and just a number of things are coming up. And obviously decisions are made on what's more important and what should be, delayed. So that comes into a factor as you see how much funds you have available and moving forward. Grants. I believe Judy asked me for the grants. I think it was actually a great exercise for me to put this together, because it helps, I think, all of us to see where these grants, what they are, how much we're receiving, and what they're being utilized for. So the reason this is in red is because this has been expended. The ESSER 1 grant, Kim actually put together initially, and we have expended the grant for software, Zoom licenses as the items that are listed, technology supplies, tablets, webcams, speakers, cables, iPads, cases, hardware. You can imagine when COVID hit, the needs for us were great. Computers and just everything to put to get our classrooms ready and to provide tools for our students. So, and that just continued. So let's see. The Pccd Grant, which was completely spent, Chromebook cases, more software, Chromebooks and licenses, which we needed and they were very difficult to get. We were on Amazon, we were checking Best Buy, we were checking everywhere possible to try to acquire Chromebooks. I mean, it was delayed, but fine. We borrowed from another district, did everything we could during the COVID times and the delayed deliveries. PPE supplies and cleaning supplies, which were key. The second part of that, Dr. Farina applied for, and it's to be used for the Power Up Camp summer learning. So that one will be used this summer and next summer. The reason it's in black is because it's yet to be expended, but it's already been approved for the Power Up camps. Montgomery County CARES funding. I don't know if you remember, back in December, Montgomery County came, they have CARES funding, and they allocated funds to all the districts. You had a short period of time to spend those funds. They had to be spent by the end of December. Believe me, all the districts worked at spending those dollars for COVID items. So there was a list of allowable expenses. It was pretty liberal, understanding the difficulties that districts are dealing with. So this is how we use our software licenses. And as you know, we were equipping every classroom with different items and cameras and so forth. So there were mobile carts and cabinets, desks. And then we needed hotspots there were students who didn't have access to the internet, or they had weak access, or they're located in the outskirts of Hereford, which made it difficult. So hotspots were needed. Isolation rooms need to be created. And of course, Dr. Farina was very instrumental in setting those up and deciding what was needed to support those rooms. Floor labels, safety barriers, more PPE supplies, cleaning, materials. And then a decision was made for the athletic broadcast program to support families this year, since they had no access to go to the different events that were occurring.
Didn't that come out of the athletic budget?
No.
Oh, okay. I thought I remembered that coming out of the athletic budget.
Special Ed COVID-19 Impact Mitigation Grant. So there's a small grant that Dr. Farina wrote for expanding the ESY program. and that will occur this summer. ESSER 2, these are funds that we haven't submitted the application for, but we've already committed most of the funds. So the funds expenditures can go back to March of 20. So obviously we have committed those funds for mostly technology. The computers, some of them that we would have probably leased, we're purchasing, because the way our lease was set up, it wasn't cost effective for us. And since the ESSER funds are available to spend for technology, we're using them that way. And then GHR, which are extra nursing services. And Judy, I believe you asked last time about their services. That is coming out this year, the need, and we're using the ESSER 2 funds to support that. But we still have a balance. We should, we can submit that application and decide what the remaining items are. Although if you ask Jim Roth, he already has items planned. Some of it, a little bit of it's in this next year's budget, which then I would budget those as a revenue item. I do have some ESSER funds budgeted for revenue. I have 500,000 in next year already budgeted. And then moving forward. So ESSER 3, so there's more guidance coming out on ESSER 3 recently, what has to occur for those funds and the planning that has to be put in place. And then there's a certain amount that has to be used for learning loss, and that is 485,000. And that planning is yet to come. You have to remember, these ESSER funds are one-time funds, but the ESSER 2 and 3 can extend to 2024. And the COVID funds total, a little over 4 million. Our expended at this point is 1.6, and we have a balance remaining of 2.9, but it's not just a one-year funds. We still have 2 years beyond next year to use those funds and plan accordingly for that. Now back to the budget, and you've seen some of this before. Of course, I keep updating as I can, but this has basically stayed the same. This is our staffing additions to the budget. Full day K, autistic support, instructional coach, network administrator, and the administrative support for facilities and technology. So these are new positions in the budget. New additional contracted services. Please remember, transportation is going to be a much larger impact on us next year than it is currently for several reasons. One, it's a new contract, new cost. I will be paying for midday transportation, but transportation alone is out of that list is over 400,000. So that's an increase, of course, in expenditures that we don't have this year. Instructional support staff, day-to-day subs, there's obviously an increased need. That's grown. Administrative support temporary, there's just a little bit of money to support in the administrative area. And facilities feasibility study is a $40,000 that's in next year's budget. And as you can see, we're doing a lot of work on the facilities. It's been several years since the facilities study was done. It's time. I mean, it's time, but it helps for planning for your future capital type items. So then as a total, staff additions and contracted services is 1.8. Then again, I show this because it's been asked several times, what is the cost of full day kindergarten? I've updated the cost, lowered the capital expenses as to what our current numbers are. As you can see, it's $782,000 for the program. Expenditure summary, where we are, $70,431,632 is our total for expenditures. It's the instruction obviously being the larger part with support staff, support services, which is over 88% of our budget. Now, what's would show in there that's not showing is I have funds in our budgetary reserve to support charter schools, because normally you would see that in the 1,000 and 2,000 area, which would even raise that percentage even higher. And that's about $1.5 million that's in the 5,000 area. And then this is just graphically showing obviously the cost of instruction and support services as the major part of the budget, which it should be. Now, I put this in because I've heard a couple comments like, I know, although I think it's important and we consider the 3.7% increase since we didn't raise the millage last year, although we had a tax increases granted, you lose that opportunity moving forward to recover that revenue. So I wanted to point out, so there was a question about, so what is the cost to support just those programs? I listed full day K and autistic support together because that's a continuation of service. That autistic classes that we need to add as our students are getting older, they're moving through the system. And it was always planned that if we started the autistic program in the elementary, which we would, then it would grow as they aged and moved on to the next level. So there's two important additions that we don't have currently that we need for next year. And then instructional coaches also needed, network administrators to support all the technology changes that we've occurred and everyone being one-to-one, and then support, as explained earlier, for the tech and facilities. So together, those are just over $1 million.
So is that,
Question?
yeah, hang on. The network administrator, is that just one position?
Yes.
Go ahead, Keith.
But these positions include the cost of benefits and everything. This is total cost for the position.
Yes. And as you know, as I think you're saying, without saying it, is you have the retirement at 34.94%, you have Social Security. And
Well, no, I'm just looking at the price for a network administrator. You know, if that were the incoming salary of what we're paying an administrator, I mean, that's
oh no,
completely absurd. So I just wanted to make sure. I ask simple questions for my simple mind. Let's put it that way, just to reaffirm
nope,
what I'm seeing.
nope, that's the medical benefits and all the other benefits. Revenue. I made a few small adjustments in the revenue. The real estate numbers are as of today that we have on record. So the fund balance needed to support the budget if there was no mill increase is 4.5. Million, which I don't believe we can sustain. But that's what it would take if there's no tax increase, which would really consume your fund balance. And then this is just graphically showing that moving forward, 3.7 still takes your fund balance to 3.1 at this point. I mean, we'll continue to look at the budget, but there is not a lot of leeway, or unless we reduce program, increase class sizes, don't replace individuals. So right now, if we take the opportunity to raise it to the index at 3.7, you're still looking at supporting the budget at 3.1 unless we can find other ways to reduce it. And moving forward. And this is graphically. And the reason I put this slide in, I wanted to point something out in the revenue. I know we did revenue back in February, and that seems like a long time ago. But I wanted to point this out because I have increased the revenue streams that, I don't think I'm being really conservative. I've increased our interim taxes 105. Last year, we reduced them a little bit because of COVID, and obviously people weren't going out and buying properties or going house hunting. So, there wasn't buying properties as it had been progressing. So we reduced it. But this year I've raised it to a level that I hope that I can reach next year. This isn't a level we're reaching this year, the addition, but I think we can meet it next year. Earned income tax. We reduced last year's earned income tax based on projections by Berkheimer and what was going on in the economy. I now have raised that, and I'm using Berkheimer again as a basis plus historical information, and I'm raising it to the level they believe we will collect. And they're, I don't think they're too optimistic. I think it's going to be right on, but these are additional revenues that are already built in the revenue stream. Transfer tax, which sale of properties, obviously no properties are selling quickly right now. So I raised the original transfer by 125,000. Now here's where our losses come into play. Interest has basically dropped off the face of the earth. We're not going to meet this year's interest. And we had reduced that from several hundred thousand to 90, and we're lucky if we hit 50. So I reduced the 90,000 that we have in currently to 40,000 in next year, but that's realistic. It's just really, really low, and moving forward, there's no prediction for it to going up. I mean, it's good for people borrowing. It's just not good for reinvestment. Student activity admissions, I didn't reduce it all the way, but obviously there was a great loss in our current year because we couldn't have activities or students, weren't visitors to games. We just basically had this teams playing with no visitors. Now next year hopefully we'll have some. Will we be back at full capacity? I don't know, but I didn't remove all of it. I just reduced it. Tech fees I had to reduce because we're not charging. We didn't charge last year. This is another item that I won't see in revenue this year because a decision was made as we're moving into the new year that we're requiring students to have computers and Chromebooks. So we decided we would not charge a tech fee. Rentals, well, that's basically, we haven't been renting anything the current year. So our revenues are way down. I didn't reduce it all the way, but I reduced it a portion for next year, not knowing what that rental picture will look like. And then contributions and donations, these are donations we will not receive next year. These donations were part of an agreement we had with St. Luke's Hospital for, we went to a multi-year training agreement with the first several years of contributions from them that actually offset what we were paying them. But it wasn't for the entire length of the contract. There will be no contributions next year. So the reason I point this out is I have additional revenue in these areas that I don't think I could raise anymore to try to reduce the need for fund balance.
Keith, do you have a question?
Yes. Well, it's more of a comment. We've reduced tech fees for the last year and this year. With the change in the way we've been teaching, those fees may continue to go down or be eliminated. Is it possible?
They are eliminated. We're not charging anything. The only thing we're charging is if they break it and we have to repair it. So that takes away all the tech fees that I have in the current budget. Oh, I think I have $1,000. No, yeah, I did reduce it. I'm sorry. So, right, we have decision for next year, as long as the board agrees, that we won't be charging for computers, but we will charge, and we do have a list of pricing for repairs of the broken items, just like textbooks. So if a child loses a textbook, they have to pay for it. So, and our list of fees that we need to collect is growing.
Anybody else for right now? Okay, go ahead.
Okay. All right. Budget increases. We do have contracts. We do have compensation plans in place. There are increases for staff in salaries and the benefit increases, retirement increases. So these are increases that occur in the budget normally. It's just obviously based on those agreements and contracts. And then the Western Center, of course, we have more students attending the Western Center, costs are increasing. So this just outlines the major areas. Like if you're looking at the object codes from the big budget, excuse me, you'll see in each different area where some of these costs are in the 300, 400s, and 500s. And the overall increase in the budget, as you can see here, is 3.7 because there are some decreases in some other areas. This is a look at the increases based on whatever millage increase the board decides to move forward to pass the proposed final budget. Again, even if you pass it, whatever number, that can be adjusted come June. And then just to make it a little bit easier to see, the increased percentage in the millage rate, the additional taxes generated, and then what's still needed in the end in fund balance. Unless we can find a way to reduce some of these items or, again, increasing class size, reducing staffing, you're faced still with a $3.1 million fund balance that's needed to support this budget. And then proposed final budget is May 13th. Now I can go back over anything you would like.
I just have a quick question about the midday transportation. If I remember correctly, it was already covered. That's this, well, obviously we won't have kindergarten next year. So that's just the Western Center?
It's just the Western Center that will have midday, but the overall cost is just an increase in the overall transportation cost is not just midday. It's just that we'll be paying for midday, which we didn't pay for before. But either way, it didn't matter what contractor we would be utilizing. We would have to start paying for midday because all of them had that in their proposal. But you're right, it will be just the Western Center next year.
At least that'll help a little bit.
It does. You're right, it does. The thing we don't know, and depends on the need, hopefully we don't need to add a bus for morning and afternoon just because of the ridership. But right now, the ridership is down. It's going to be difficultly planning next year's transportation, and I've already talked to Jen probably a million times, just because right now, and they'll explain it more when you have your meeting coming up about transportation. Currently, the ridership is down, but it's COVID time. So, you know, usually we have 3,100 riders and I have 1,700. So you think, oh, well, that should be able to reduce some vehicles. Well, because of COVID, and the change going from hybrid to 4-day and all the changes that were going on, we couldn't really reduce the fleet. But next year, moving forward, you know, we'll be scheduling the full buses for utilization. And by August 1st, we will notify the transportation company of the vehicles that are needed. And it's really going to depend on how many individuals will be coming back and riding vehicles. And of course, that could change at any time. We could ask them for a commitment, but tomorrow they could, you know, they'll say, no, I think I need a bus now. So it's going to be a challenge. Fortunately, I think with the new program that we have, that will help assist to make that a little easier transitioning than what we currently have.
So what we have right now budgeted for transportation in general assumes that every single kid that rode the bus before will ride the bus again?
Well,
Where we're going with that?
Pretty much so. They will schedule right now. I mean, you're right. What's in the budget assumes that we will have similar ridership as we would have had if it wasn't COVID. That will be finally determined. Like right now, we're already looking at stops, and the difficulty is we're scheduling them on who's riding now, but we can't close that off until we have maybe a better commitment as far as who may be riding in the fall. Because once let's say we maximize the buses with 1,800, and then all of a sudden, you know, those who rode before want to ride, well, then we'd be adding a number of vehicles. So we want to it's going to have to be carefully planned, and that'll probably be in the month of July. They're going to be reaching out. I mean, prior to that, I'm sure, you know, there'll be a question, something that asks parents, but then moving forward, we're going to be very careful with that. Also, childcare plays a part in that, because we do transport to local childcare. I mean, depending on where that childcare is being provided, that has an impact, but that had an impact before. And then you have your non-public. So that pretty much will be consistent, but we did have some that didn't ride this year, around 20 students less. And again, that's an important factor moving forward, one for reimbursement purposes, and then just for overall transportation.
Thanks. Anybody else? GD Keith, and if not, I will open to Peg. Dana.
I'm okay right now, Melanie. I'm still just trying to process it all.
Yeah, I know. Yep, I know what you mean.
I will put this on the SharePoint.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A lot of information. But
Yes.
please let me know what you need from us as far as, now, I will need to put a motion on the agenda for a budget and for what the increase will be. So I will need some direction, at least I guess by Friday or Monday.
Okay,
As far as what they, I mean, obviously you can change that. That's going to be, someone, whatever the recommendation is, but there will be a motion on the agenda.
okay. And I'll let the other board members that aren't on, I'll let them know that that's on the SharePoint so that they can take a look at that at their leisure as well, with the aim of making sure we have some kind of motion. Because
Okay.
right now, I don't know what it is. I want it to be 0.
Well, if I may say that that would be extremely dangerous, just because you lose those revenues forever. And the other thing is we can't support the difference between the expenditures and the revenue. And looking back, we've never budgeted anything close to that level for fund balance need. And I know we've increased our fund balance, but if I go back, let me go back to the beginning. We're close to the beginning. Sorry. I should know what slide it is. Whoops. So yes, did we increase our fund balance? But not, except for 1920. We're not saying by, millions of dollars. And the other part is, remember how much you have in capital. Your capital fund is not being depleted, but if you want to continue with some of the projects moving forward that are in the horizon, you're going to need funds in the capital, because you're not positioned to borrow right now. You could, I don't know your bond rating. If you have a fund balance, so it should keep a decent bond rating, but I don't think you want to incur more debt. Not yet. I would wait till some of the debt drops off, but you might not be able to. You might need those renovations sooner than later, and you would have to increase your debt. So keeping a capital fund, or at least having something in there that can support whatever capital projects you have, I think is important. And if you're going to use, hopefully this year, see, it's difficult right now with the COVID funds, because it could show up at the end of this year. Wow, we have more of a fund balance than we thought. Well, that's because we received some one-time money, being COVID dollars. So it could skew that and look like, well, we have a lot of money. Well, we won't, because all those items, you think about the items we purchased, the PPE, the extra cleaning supplies, the GHR nurses, all the computers, the tech items that are in the classroom so they could support virtual as well as in-class learning. They were all additional expenses that we didn't plan for. So fortunately, we were able to use COVID dollars to support that. So, and then, the learning loss, that's important. Obviously, there's all the statistics out there. There was some learning loss during this period that we will need to support. Well, there's COVID funds to do that, which is great. So we don't have to take that out of our general fund budget, but it still will be supported, still be expenditure, and there'll still be some revenue. So looking at this, the change in fund balance, except for last year, which we transferred, think about it, that $5 million you've spent already. That supported your Giza project, which was, we took advantage of an opportunity where there was a need in the high school. Most of it's in the high school. And in touring the high school, you have greater needs than just what the Giza is doing moving forward. So you have to think about those. And if the feasibility study is approved, that'll be a good indication to help what that planning is moving forward, and what that looks like, and what buildings possibly need attention. So there's a lot of moving parts. I just stress, if there's there's a question or there's something you don't understand, or if I wasn't clear, please just reach out to me. Maybe not the next 2 days, I'll be driving, but anytime I'll answer you as quickly as I can, or provide you with the data that you need to make that informed decision.
Yeah, I think so far this year, this has been the most information we've ever had. I appreciate that.
And I have oodles of data, so it's just
Yes, you do.
let me know.
If I could just chime in real quick, just to fill up a little space here. We totally get it and understand the requests that are here, and try to not make it a luxurious new, we want this new and that new and all that kind of, just trying to bring you the things that we think are moving us forward and keeping us on that trajectory moving forward, and getting to be the district that we all want to be. It's just the financial piece here. And we also totally get, at least I'm speaking from administration, because we have the conversations. And Keith, at one point you said, is this it? And the answer is no, this isn't it. I mean, there's other requests, and that's our job. Our job is to funnel it down to bring you the most, the most succinct needs that are here. If we're told to sharpen our pencils, some of the things on those charts will be up for discussion. If we're still looking at class size, that's another area. We're looking at all the retirements, and I think we went through the retirements, and all of them, except one at this time, is one that definitely needs to be replaced based upon the uniqueness of the position. When I see the other one may not, that's about class size. So that's a normal classroom teacher that we have to wait and see what the roll up is from the number of students coming from the previous grade to this grade. So, we have our data. We'll see the data here soon. We're going to try to process that a little bit, and then hopefully late May, early June, if we can get a plan together from our admin team to the board to present, maybe even the workshop here in May of what we would like to do next year. We can get that declaration out the door to then we can answer Sandy's questions about transportation in early June, mid-June. We can answer questions on class size. We can answer questions on fully 5 days in versus virtual, or UPOLA, and all those things sooner than later. We do not want to be doing that in July and August and all that kind of stuff. We want to have, if we can get something to you, and maybe I'm speaking out of turn, but definitely to the workshop to get something there. And we would like to get that kind of a nod from the board, like this is the direction we want you to go because this makes sense. And then we can get that out the door. That'll all play a role in here as well. So we understand the requests that are on the table, as well as that no one likes to raise taxes. No one likes to be. We also know that if it's 0.1% or 3.7%, the same people won't be happy because it's being raised. So that's all a part of the conversation. It's just that balance here. So anyway.
Thanks, Alan. Peg, go ahead. I see your hand.
Do we have any kind of projections for move-ins to the community? Are we monitoring new housing and people moving in?
So I'm glad you said that, because I was going to mention something. I don't have projections basically moving in. We haven't done a study for a while, but I think it's important to know, the THP properties have been going on for, I don't know, 10, 12, I don't know how many years now. They're finished. So there's no more, the housing at the THP properties near us is complete. So I'm not going to see that increased revenue that we see as far as the assessment increases in that area. Now, I do know there's some other homes going up, like in Pennsburg and in other developments, but that was a development that kept growing and would help our assessed value. Although our assessed value didn't increase dramatically, it still was increasing. So in fact, one time this year, we saw it go down before it went up again because of some either appeals or other decreases in the municipalities. So I don't think we're going to see, I don't think the assessment increases are going to bring a lot of revenue moving forward, unless we see more housing developments occur, but nothing like the THP properties. As far as individuals moving in, we don't have anything to target that except with the possible homes that are available. Sometimes we reach out to municipalities to get an idea of what's on the docket as far as what housing projects are in the works, but that's about it.
And are we concerned about Knoll and what might happen there?
Well, when I saw the article, I was actually saw it in the news first and then in the papers. What I read, they have a commitment with the governor and they're getting some dollars because of that. So I don't know if it's going to change in our location or not. It was really difficult to tell from what I read. I don't know if anyone else knows more than that, but it seemed like they do have a commitment. for some expansion, if not expansion or maintaining. And I do know they opened that facility up in Quakertown because they moved something else here. They moved something out and to another facility. But I don't know what's going to happen in the final takeover.
Yeah, I'm trying to stay plugged in through the chamber because we have a couple of Knoll representatives on there just to listen, and it was brought up at one of the meetings recently. But yeah, I would say, Peg, I would say, yeah, that is a concern with few businesses, in the area. That's a big one that takes, I'm sure we have a lot of employees that students that their parents work there, and bringing an active part of the community.
Well, you certainly won't get any argument from me that the last thing we want to do is raise taxes. But I want to address the board members that are here tonight, that if we are pushed to a point where we have to raise taxes, whether, no matter how high, I think we need to come out with a dialogue to be very transparent. And I'm not saying push the blame off of us, because we get to make the tough decisions and get very little credit for it. We're usually getting hammered for it. And that's the role you take on when you run for school board and get elected. But I think we have to be transparent about things that are going on here, like we're paying for a new middle school. We're adding programs like full day K. All that stuff has to be paid for. So I'm just saying, if we have to raise taxes, we've got to be very clear to the community, this is why. We chose to build a new middle school. Well, we got to pay for it. We chose to add full day K because we needed to, and we were 20 years behind doing that. So we got to pay for it. And there's other things that we could talk about. The other thing I want to bring up, which will probably make me the most hated person at this meeting, or, beyond, and that is, I keep coming back to this. The decisions that were made in the past, some of those are killing us. And that is not a cut to anybody at this meeting. Not criticizing any of the administrators, but things have been done in the past that are just biting us. I mean, I went through some papers today. I was cleaning out some paperwork that I had stacked up, and I came across the article from 2 years ago with the mold and the money we spent to clean up that mold. God, I wish we had that back now. And when you talk about things that we have to pay for, I think we ought to be transparent about charter schools and what we're forking out for charter schools. I think the community needs to know that. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. And again, I'm not trying to deflect the blame off of the board, but people have to know, if we're going to raise taxes, this is why. Because stuff costs money. So I'll get off my soapbox and stop ranting. Just one more thing. I do want to take Andrea with me shopping when I go for clothes, because I know you're going to get me a good deal. Hey, thanks.
Thanks, Peg. I couldn't agree with you more.
What kind of deals we talking about? Something really
I
good?
was wondering.
Well, I want discount. And so I think Andrea will get me discounts.
Yep.
Well, you
She's
should
on
team
it.
up with Vicky also. That's the only thing I don't complain about when she shops. But just to give you backup, Peg, I mean, I've said the same thing over the years. I feel the same way. If we have to increase taxes, we have to increase taxes. But at the same time, when I talk to people about it individually, I let them know what the expenses are and what where the money's going to, and as I said before, as you said, the past has come back to haunt us, and I'll be on the soapbox for 30 seconds. When when Melanie and the group took over 4 years ago and started all these committees, one of the things that I noticed the first time through was for the facilities, they had things that were on there for a number of years that rolled. One of those was the chiller. And as I said before, if you don't get to it by the second year, you better start outsourcing it by the third year in that 5-year plan, because otherwise it just gets more expensive. But I agree with you completely, Peg. If we have to raise taxes, we will. And no matter what we tell the people, they still won't be happy. So we're just going to bear it. Thank you.
Thanks, Keith.
Oh, I'm sorry. As far as the housing and the influx coming in, there is no more major expansion that I know of. The homes that went up in Pittsburgh up by 11th Street are pretty much all completed. There's probably only 2 or 3 lots that might be open there, I think. That's not going to give us a whole hell of a lot of revenue, because I think there were 19 to 21 maybe houses in there. And they just approved a development in Red Hill, Upper Hanover. I think it's down off of 6th Street or someplace, where they're going to put in 30 to 35 houses, I think. So there's not anything comparable to THP coming into the district. So at this point, we're kind of built out for a number of years now, I think.
Yeah, that was a pretty big windfall, even though it took a lot of years. That was a lot of difference, once the house was built and sold, to the assessment of what it was. There is one more project. I'm not at liberty to talk about it. I'm not sure how many it is. So just something I heard, and it's good source. So hopefully that'll help too. Anybody else? Questions, comments? Go ahead, Dina.
I just have a question about the fund balance, and I might have asked it last year. Okay, our fund balance is close to 15 million. Is there some sort of ratio of what our budget is, 70 million, to what our fund balance should be? Or are we just trying to keep an adequate fund balance for expected emergencies? That's a bad term, but things that can come up.
Okay, so the fund balance is what I gave you is a total fund balance. You have committed fund balance set aside for retirement increases to use when as needed, and then for some debt service. So the rest of the fund balance is unreserved. And yes, I mean, there's certain levels. It's interesting the way the code is the district can have an unreserved fund balance of 8%, but that's not your total fund balance. That's just the unreserved portion. We have funds reserved when the balance our budget, which this year is going to be kind of tough to figure out what that's going to be like. And then we have committed fund balance to support some other items when needed. So you have those funds, which I think we'll be tapping into. The other thing is you can consider, if you want, to take some of those and earmark it to capital and try to move some into your capital fund. I would wait to see what happens for the end of 1920, but you also have to remember all those COVID grants that are coming in, one-time expenses that are being expended. So it's just carefully looking at how to utilize those funds. But there is a target, yes.
Anything else, Dana? Okay. All right. If we don't have anything else, then I guess we're all going to just have to stew on it a little bit yet.
Yep, we have the rest of this week. We're still working on the agenda for next week, and if we could go into the meeting. I mean, Melanie, you and I can obviously have the conversation as we've been having weekly, just to touch base on the agenda, and if there's something that you want to put on, if you want to put it on with a blank, or however, not that I like that, but whatever we got to do to get to that point where we have the conversation. It could be another discussion at the board. I know Sandy's hoping to have something approved coming out of the 13th meeting, right, Sandy?
Yes, definitely.
And it can be changed. So whatever that happens, we can continue to work at it, from there, and we'll continue on our end to continue to work as well. So.
Sandy, do you think your recommendation will include, a range of tax increases, like from minimal, here's what we can squeak by with, to here's what we need to really stockpile, for lack of a better word?
Well, now I'm working on some stuff for current year, just to look at where that is, but Peg, you're not going to want to hear my answer. My recommendation is going to be the 3.7 to go to the index. You know, we didn't seek out exceptions. We didn't use the index at all last year. I know it went up. We had because of STEM, but again, that's, you know, dollars that we could have raised and we didn't. Understandably so, it was COVID year and that decision was made for that, you know, partially because of that. But I'm concerned moving forward, and I think at the level of having a $3 million coming out of fund balance or proposed to come out of fund balance is more than I would like it to be. And like Dr. Roach said, we're still going to be looking at those expenditures, but as Keith, everything that was asked for isn't in this budget. It was narrowed down to this level, but we will continue to look as we class sizes and as the kindergarten registrations come in. Do we need three new ones or not? So we will continue to look to see if we can reduce the expenses, but $3 million at 3.7 is more than enough to use out of fund balance. That's my opinion.
That's all I'm asking for. Thanks.
I do have, do we have any thoughts or any preliminary numbers on the survey yet? I'm thinking specifically, obviously, about the charter school kids.
Yeah, of the charter school survey, I got 33 responses, which is low compared to, we think we have what, roughly almost 200, right, Sandy?
Yeah.
Roughly.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, the question, that's interesting. Do you intend to send your child to the district for their, for grade level 5 days a week in person? And 14 said yes. So 14 said yes, 13 said no, and then a whole lot of we're moving if face masks are required. They're going to continue in this other school, that type of thing. So I hadn't looked at it. So I actually have 14 coming back of that grouping that's there. And let me make sure that, and then there's actually another, there's probably another 2 or 3 based upon the second question that there's kind of an opt out there. So
Okay.
that's 14 right now. I mean, it's a little less than half of the people that filled it out, although I don't think you could extrapolate that all the way out. The good news is the people, the response rate that we had for the survey of students that are with us still, the response rate was 95% 1 to 3, 89% 4 and 5, 89% 6 to 8, and 78% 9 to 12. That's a great response rate, just getting information back. And all of them are, everything is in the 90s, saying that they're coming back full day, 5 days a week, with the exception of high school, which is 89.9. And actually, I think that's higher because they haven't taken the next level question, which has, again, like an out to still come back to that. So as it's very much surface level, that definitely helps. And I think will help administration in terms of planning what that will look like to get it to scale and not have so many different programs going and additional costs. So, but
Okay.
I understand your question was about cyber, but even 14 coming back is, 14 itself is it's over $100,000. I mean, what is that? More than that, depending upon if they're general ed, definitely 100, close to that.
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Yeah.
So I
just
think
wanted to get a feel.
getting some of those to come back and commit, like I said, if we can try to do that in early June, that definitely could help as we're fine tuning it a little bit. The way Sandy has the budget down to, per teacher, per level, per everything to get that exact salary. That's how we have to get with the students. Right now, it's the number that the additional 1.5 million is based upon the number of students that are there right now. So.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Anyone else have questions? Nope, I don't see any hands. All right. Anyone want to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was a
Well,
lot of information.